in the tutorial that is more specific to cost-benefit analysis. For the most part, you don't need them for the course, and they can sometimes be detrimental. But you should be aware that you can always get information about formulas that are built into Excel. Okay. All right. So that's good information. In general, you want to reference any time that you possibly can. Okay, so anytime you can reference a cell in a formula rather than typing in a number, you want to do that. Okay, it just makes your spreadsheet very, very flexible, so long as you're aware that changing one thing is going to change your answer. Okay, so I've had a couple of instances where there is an assignment or a final assignment where you're asked the present value formula calculation at 5%, and you're asked the present value calculation at 1%, and I end up getting the same answer for both of them, and the present value at 5% and the present value of 10%, the present value at 1%, and that can't be, because you just have to be aware that your spreadsheet will change when you change your reference cells. So anytime I change B3, B4, or B5, that's going to change my answer here. Okay, so if instead we said, well, what happens if we're not going to get $100 for 5 years rather than 2? Change my answer. What if we said you were getting $10,000 instead of $100? Changes your answer once again. This number hasn't changed, whereas any time our present value formula that has been referenced, that one changes. Okay, very good. There's one other thing that I think is worthwhile to know when looking at Excel and formulas. The other useful element, and I'm on a new page just for clarity, is that you can copy and paste your formulas so that you don't always have to be writing the formulas again and again and again. And you'll see that Excel is pretty smart, and it adjusts the formulas the way it thinks you want it to. You just have to be very careful about what happens. The way I'm going to show you what I mean, because it's much easier to show you than to tell you this, is to give an example of, let's say, 3 students in a class. Right? So let's say we have, Michelle, Robin, and Jason, and lest anyone worry that I'm referencing them, these are my siblings. So don't worry that this is you. And we've got 2 tests in the class, and they're both weighted equally, right? So let's say that Michelle did very well in class, right? So she got a 95 on the first test and a 91 on the second test. Robin got, well, Robin's not doing very well at all. Okay. And Jason did nicely on the first test and did kind of poorly on the second test. So we've got our 3 students and their 3 scores. So if I wanted to know, well, what is their average in the class right now? We all know that the average formula, we just have to know how to spell it, okay, average, that we're going to take the score for test 1 plus the score for test 2 and divide it by 2. We do need to be careful that we put parentheses in the right place here. Again, the order of operations will matter. Okay, so example for Michelle, if I do equals B3, which is her score on test 1, plus B4, right, her score on, on test 2, and divide this by 2, I get a very strange answer. I get 140. So Michelle has an average of 140. Well, the reason I got this wrong answer is because I didn't pay attention to the order of operations. What it did was it took 95 plus 91 divided by 2. What I need to do is actually equals parentheses B3 plus B4. Now divide all of that by 2. And I get 93, right? And you probably could have done that in your head, but it's nice to know that you can get the average. Now here's the cool part. If I copy what's in B6, right, and you can copy the same way that you would copy and paste something in Microsoft Word. So I can use the edit function. I can use Control-C or Command-C. I'm going to copy cell B6 and I'm going to paste it into the C column for Robin. Now when I paste it, notice that excuse me, the numbers are actually different, right? 93 and 67.5. What's happened is Excel has copied the formula but changed the column numbers. Seeing that I was copying from column B to column C, it said, oh, you must mean you want to do the same formula, the same calculation that you did in column B, but you want to do it for a different set of numbers. Okay, which is very useful, right? Because that, in fact, is what I meant to do. Okay, so I'm actually adding now C3 plus C4 divided by 2. Excel has automatically updated it. And again, I can do that same thing over for Jason, right, and get 82.5. So now Excel has automatically, look at what's happening in the formula. For D6, it's D3 plus D4 divided by 2. Now that's great. You do need to be aware that that's happening because sometimes you don't want that to change. And let me show you a kind of more interesting example. Right, so let's say, let me just insert some cells here. Let's say that Michelle, Robin, and Jason, in addition to their tests, are also part of a group. All right, and they, as a group, they had to write a paper together. And let's say Michelle wrote most of it, and they got a 92 on that paper. So this is going to help everyone's, well, except for Michelle, it's going to help Robin and Jason's average. If the group paper and the tests are each worth equal amounts for their final grade, right? Well, now we've got to figure out their new average, right? So it's going to be equals, parentheses, B3 plus B6, which is Michelle's score on the first test, B6 plus B7, and I will divide by 3 now. Okay, very good. So that's very nice. Michelle has a 92.667 out of her 3 grades. And if I copy this and paste it to Robin, well, Robin's grade didn't seem to improve very much, right? She had a 92, a 60, and a 75. So it doesn't seem to make sense that her average would be 45. What's happening is because I copied and pasted this formula, well, let's look what's happening in C9. It's taking C3 plus C6 plus C7. C3 is right here. There's nothing in C3, and so Excel is thinking that must mean 0. Plus C6 plus C7. So it's almost like Robin got a 0 on the group paper. In other words, Excel extended all of that adjustments from the B column to the C column, including the group paper, which I didn't actually want it to do. Somehow I want to tell Excel, keep cell B3 constant in all of these formulas, but shift the other ones when I copy them to other columns. Right, so keep cell B3 always, but shift everything else. So it would be nice if there's a way that we can do that for Excel. And actually, there is. All right, and I'm going to show you that right now. What you do is, we'll do Michelle's formula again. You do equals B3 plus B6 plus B7 divided by 3. Okay. Now, I go into this cell editor right up here. Okay, and I click into it. In order to tell Excel to keep B3 constant, I put a $sign before the column and a $sign before the row. So $B, $3. And that's going to tell you always keep B3. Don't shift B3 up, down, over. I don't want you to do that. I want you to keep B3 constant, but shift the other ones. Okay, so now look what happens. If I copy this cell and then paste it for Robin, aha, that seems more reasonable, that she'd have a 60, a 75, and a 92, and that would average to 75. So if we look at what's happening in row C9, in cell C9, look at that. B3 has remained the same, but C6 and C7 have shifted over in order to show that it's Robin's tests. And if I wanted to copy that over for Jason, again, for Jason, it's still B3, the grade on the group paper, plus D6, plus D7. Okay. That is going to become important because a lot of times we're going to keep, let's say, interest rates the same but change other things. And you'll be copying and pasting a lot of formulas, but you'll want to keep certain information constant and not have Excel shift any copied and pasted formulas over. So it's just a $ before the column and a $ before the row. That's it for the basics. If you just want to go over it again, we covered the concept of rows and columns, covered the concepts of cells, the intersection of a column and row. There are 3 things that you can put into a cell. It's text or labels, numbers or constants, and formulas. If you're going to use a formula, you have to use equal and then the regular operation. You do need to pay attention to orders of operations, and I recommend using parentheses whenever you're unsure. Once you've put in the correct formula, including the order of operations, you are able to copy and paste formulas, and Excel will shift the formula to the row or column that you seem to be indicating. In order to keep a reference constant, you can put $ before the letter and before the number of the cell designation. All right, thanks.